Mark here for another Great Wisdom and Knowledge 5 podcast. And I bring on Ryan Hough, self-sabotage mindset coach, to discuss, what's going on with the world, certain tactics, you name it. Ryan, I am so thrilled to have you as a guest. Welcome.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate you, man. Yeah, thanks for
And,
having me.
and 2024, couldn't be in this day and age, couldn't be a better time to discuss, what's going on in the world tactics, and how do you see things right now, especially compared to like 2020 when we had the year that just totally shifted everyone in the world.
Yeah, it's remarkable, right? It seems like there's a lot of the same sort of narratives that are playing out. Of course, obviously, it seems like it's an election year, so it appears that we're headed down the same trajectory of division and chaos and of course fear, right? Fear is a big one. Um, and Yeah. Yeah, but where we're headed, oh man, like I don't know. I'm hoping that, I think more and more, judging from like 2020 to 2024, I think more and more people are starting to expand and to wake up, to start to see sort of the hypocrisies of everything. I think they got away with a lot in 2020, but 2024 seems like it's more and more, or not necessarily falling for it, or they're at least aware of in my opinion, my humble opinion, the agenda of division. I mean, that's really what it's
Mhm.
all about, right? If they can divide everyone and, squabbling back and forth, then can they can divert the attention away from what's really important.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people too in this day and age, whether it be shutting off your TV set, shutting off the mainstream news, you name it. And a lot of people are doing their own research, whether it be, on alternate search engines, social media platforms, and it is making a difference, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it is. I mean, like social media technology is a tool, right? It's amazing. And so it's just a matter of like how you curate your social media content. I've been definitely very diligent and vigilant on, like, who pops up on my feed. And yeah, it definitely is. There's definitely alternative sources that are out there. And then there's also, the potential of infiltration as well. So you have to be always kind of aware of all of that. Um, but yeah, so I mean, I specialize in the subconscious mind as, a self-sabotage and mindset coach. So it's really it's it's imperative that we um understand the importance of the content that we're digesting. And so, because that will definitely help with our, mindset going forward, but also the programming in itself.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
there's just it just seems like at least now more people are in tune as to what really happened. There's so much truth coming out about, whether it be the vaccines, you name it, that how on earth would somebody, fall for what happened in 2020 to what's happening in 2024,
I think ego has a lot to do with it as well, right? It's hard to admit when you've made a mistake. I know I have. It's challenging, right? It's hard to face the reality that, also, like, it's not comforting facing a reality that who you thought was your caregiver, the government or whatnot, is now actually acting from a nefarious point of view. It's challenging. They don't necessarily have your best interests, and so to unravel all of that and to accept that, I mean, um, I do have empathy. I have compassion, because it's challenging. I know that we've probably all had our own experiences of the sort of like this great unlearn, right? Like, of unlearning everything that that we once thought and we was true. And so yeah, it's challenging, and I know, like, I oscillate back and forth. It's still 2024, and we're going to grocery stores, and you see individuals still wearing face coverings, and it can be a little alarming, and uh, it's I think it's ego, right? It's hard to admit that you've been duped. What's the Mark Twain quote? It's easier to fool someone than to tell them that they've been fooled.
Mhm.
Something along those lines.
And one thing I think it's important to resonate with anyone listening, whether you're in tune as to what's going on in the world and or not. It's like these people like Ted Rose and Klaus Schwab and all these people, people need to realize just how much money they're making and how they are not for the people. When was it ever, the World Health Organization, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum is supposed to rule over the world. No, it's not like that. We are humanity. We can think for ourselves. We can, determine what's right, what's wrong, and we don't need a ruling class. That doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's I mean, I definitely agree with that, and I would say that others, it's comforting knowing that their decisions can be made for them.
That's a
Um,
good point.
yeah, I think it's also like adult versus child programming.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna give you a little bit of, I guess, backstory from myself. I have experience of like a 20 plus year acting career. Um, I share the classic story of, actors working at bars, nightclubs, and restaurants, and so our own, like, the typical ongoing joke amongst us were like, okay, oh, you're an actor. Oh, cool. Which restaurant? And
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
right, right. So, but the one thing that was cool was that I don't know whether it was cool, but it was an opportunity to see was a lot of human interactions and witnessing people in self-sabotaging behaviors and how they acted out. And
Hmm.
of course, I had my own fair share of and participated in it as well. And additionally, during that time while I was acting, I was able to, get into different roles as I was able to participate and invoke different human emotions and how easily we can shift from one state to another,
Hmm.
and embody different characters and stories. And that all led me to give myself permission to explore the human psyche and psychology and why we truly do the things that we do. And this led me on the journey of self-exploration and then the human brain and the subconscious, which ultimately led me to Jason Christoph's work, which I know that you're familiar with. And then of course then, led me to my own coaching business. So um, so I guess I work primarily through the subconscious, and what who we are essentially is a set of programs, I guess you could say. We're running software that is either updated or outdated. And if we're self-sabotaging, which I know we've all experienced our own unique flavor and taste of that, um, I know that I have, and it can be confusing as to the mechanisms of why and like what's behind it. So self-sabotaging is essentially when we cut ourselves down before anyone else can. And that can manifest in either, procrastination, perfectionism, overeating, substance abuse, negative self-talk, remaining in that comfort zone, um, and then like a plethora of other behaviors. And then the main reason why we do that is because, or like why we self-sabotage, is because of those old default programs that are no longer like good. Like they're no longer they're outdated. And so, and a lot of those subconscious mindsets have been installed in early childhood. And during our formidable years, ages 0 to 7. And though they worked back then, they're not helpful as adults, as we're now unconsciously acting and behaving from those outdated set programs. And so what I do is I identify not only what has been implemented and programmed, but more importantly, identify what hasn't been said in order for you to achieve your goals, your aspirations, and your dreams. And then I also work with stories, so we usually work like use words as descriptive. In other words, we look at words as a means to describe our experiences, describe our feelings and our reality. But in actuality, words are actually they're creative. We create with our words. The words that we choose actually create our perspective and our reality. And so the stories that we tell ourselves to ourselves about ourselves are impactful as the words we choose help create that perspective. And then so the greatest hack that we can use in order to implement, a mindset shift or a pivot is just to be conscious of the words that we're using. And so in order to implement that immediate change, if we're wishing to do that, we can just replace a word or add a word or remove one. And then so back to the subconscious, the subconscious mind is like essentially, it's like a 500-pound gorilla that just sits on your left shoulder, and it's your bodyguard, and it surveys and it scans the environment, and it's looking for patterns and repetitions.
Mhm.
And it mimics the environment in order to create the necessary sense of belonging and safety, because we're pack animals. And so it's looking for, like, we want to go along to get along, so to speak. And it only really takes 2 repetitions in order for the subconscious to identify a safeguard. And a safeguard is just that. It's just repetitive content that it can mimic in order to be accepted in the greater tribe. And then the intentions of the subconscious are true. It's like your best friend. It wants you to be safe.
Mhm.
And so it looks for those repetitions. However, if we're using outdated software that are not necessarily aligned with our adult programming, then it can be counterintuitive. Um, and then again, so what we do is we identify what hasn't been said and then flood the system with new patterns and new familiarity and new updated software that is more aligned with your goals and your aspirations and your dreams. And that can be uncomfortable, because there's also there's a pain threshold as well. And that's why people get stuck in those old patterns. And so I think we talked a little bit before we went on, but I mentioned Mark Passio. Mark Passio, coins this phrase, but I think it's definitely relevant to this, is humans are not necessarily inherently evil, nor are they inherently angelic, but
Mhm.
humans are inherently programmable. And so I think we definitely see that over the last 4 years played out. And then we can also see that going forward, is that if we're not necessarily aware and we start bringing awareness and consciousness, we can start to mimic the environment, and that mimicry is not necessarily going to be in your best interest.
I agree 100%. And
Yeah,
what with the way that society is, do you think more and more people like people are unaware? Okay, they're not like you and I, of course, but people are unaware that what their actions, what they are doing, what they are following is leading to things like Agenda 2030 and to authoritarian ruled uh land, so to speak. But they genuinely think as humans that they're doing good. Wouldn't you say so?
the people that are in
The
the
people that are, following in line with everything that's going on in the world and with every single word,
absolutely.
mainstream media or whatever government officials, you name it, say.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And you could see, right? They played on those cards as well, right? They were, it was like for the greater good. It was for your
Mhm.
neighbor. It was for, your the elderly. And so yeah, you could definitely see that I mean, they know like we are, for the most part, the majority, the mass is like about, wanting to be of value and to bring value. And so what they do is they usurp that and invert that, and they actually um, program you to feel like that you're doing well, but in essence, you're actually harming yourself and the
Hmm.
others. Because I mean, in actuality, right, we needed to have the strong, we needed to have the the strong go out and actually help. If that was really truly, the emergency that we were in, then we needed to
Hmm.
have strong men and strong women go out and actually and provide and help, and not just stay in and watch Netflix and chill.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
or go through the drive-through line because fast food. And that's another thing too in society. If they cared about health, you wouldn't have a fast food joint on every corner, every single corner, and it'd be packed. You wouldn't have people who are obsessed with things like Chick-fil-A, which is horrible for your health. You know?
absolutely. No, for sure. Yeah, no, for sure. And then I think also, to your previous question, like, even the people that are within those organizations, like the WEF and like, the World Health
WHO,
Organization,
yeah.
WHO. So they're all, I think it's the ones that are at the top. It's like a pyramid, right? Like like the ones at the top, it's it's like military, right? Like it's a need to know basis. And so you're compartmentalized, and and then you also have, again, it comes back to ego, right? So you invest all this time and energy and resources to go to school in order to get yourself to a position where then you are working for the UN or for, or whatnot. Then you also are blind and not necessarily wanting to look at like all potentially that all that time is
Mhm.
wasted. And so then you just, and then also you're being programmed and you're around all the environment of everyone going out and doing the right thing. And yeah, and it's not this big grand conspiracy. It just takes a few at the very tippy top. And then of course, with conspiracy, I mean, there's anyone that scoffs at that. I mean, it happens, right? There's like, conspiracy to commit crimes occur every day,
Mhm.
right? So now it just happens on a grand scale. And yeah,
And you just see, I don't know. I do you think that in the future, do you think people will be able to gather together, get along, set aside differences? Because another thing that we see in society is if you're not political, they if you say, "Oh no, I'm not political," they get mad. Or if you're not a part of this side or that side, and taking sides is not the answer. Being a part of one side over another, it's caring about all of humanity and taking a stand for the future of humanity, in my opinion.
absolutely, right. It's your civil duty. It's your
Mhm.
civil duty to cast a ballot and cast a vote, right? Um, yeah, it's again, it's programming. And then of course like this illusion of choice as well, right? So like out of how many people live in America? Like 330 million plus. I don't know. We only have potentially two candidates that are up for the job, right? I guess there's three technically. But yeah, no, it is. It's alarming. Um, and then like even the whole notion of the fact that like it's the lesser of the two evil, depending on however you want to cast. I mean, like that in of itself is also eye-opening, and we have to start to unravel that. Like, does that really truly make sense to
Not
to
one
to
bit.
cast, to cast your energy um, towards something that is not really good, but it's better than the alternative? And then, of course, again, like everything, what I'm learning is I'm learning a lot about just about law in general. And what I'm realizing is that it's all commercial. It's all based on contracts, and contracts exist every day. Like, you go to the grocery store, you're in contract essentially with anyone that is, you go to the farmer's market, you're in contract with individuals, the vendors there, to yourself as a consumer. And so what the system is the system is essentially, you have a business partner that looks like your name, but it's in all caps.
Mhm.
And essentially you're liable for that entity, for that business. And so really government is all fiction. It's all fictional. And what it does is it creates all these other little fictional entities in order for it to control. And then it takes you as like the actual living sentient being, and it makes you liable for that. And so when you go and you cast your vote, you're actually you're volunteering your services to the system. Um, and it's remarkable, right? Because like, there's legalese. Like we have two definitions in, like, English, right? There's regular English vernacular, which is how you and I would be communicating, and then there's legalese, which is seemingly like similar to English, but it has completely different contexts and definitions. And so when you get into these contracts or these situations where you're interacting with like an official of some sort, these three-letter agencies, or um, figures of self-appointed authority, you're you're having to really be aware of who you are and then what they're trying to do, because they're always going to try to contract with you. And I think just more and more that individuals are able to start to see, and like the veil being lifted, they can start to see, like, yeah, like, how does this make sense? And I think the more that people just start to go into the private by handling things more privately, again, like, you look at your terms and agreements with, like, social media apps or any kind of app that you download from
iPhone, yeah.
your iPhones, right? No one ever reads that stuff. You just scroll down to, and you just hit accept, or like, okay. Um, so it's really important though that we, with that though comes the convenience of it all, right? So it's a free app, but then you become the commodity, you become the actual, like, the product itself. And so everything that's in this realm that we're dealing with, it's all based on convenience. So we're trading our I guess our sovereignty, or our ability to be free for convenience. And so we have to be vigilant. We have to be aware of that. And so, not to say that we have to like read all the terms and agreements, but it would be interesting to start to do that. You start to realize, okay, wait a second here. Is this the long game of this? For me to accept all of this, facial recognition, for example. I recently traveled. I um, went to the airport, and so everyone's just in line, and they're just, lining up for this facial recognition. And at the top, though, you can see that it says like it's voluntary, like you can voluntarily
Voluntarily opt out.
opt out of it, right? And so what happens if you just continue to do that and just continue to just follow the line, that becomes custom, and then custom
Mhm.
then becomes the law. And so I think more and more, even like, where you put your hands up and you do that, basically that, you get basically microwaved with that X-ray thing.
Yeah.
If you can opt out of that as well, and the alternative is that you get basically groped and searched. But again, you're putting your foot down with certain things so that they don't necessarily just roll over and they become customary, and then
Mhm.
customs become that law. And again, awareness, right? Awareness is really super important.
And one thing that kind of ties along the lines of this is also when it comes to like what you're buying, whether it be foods, products, you name it, you need to really be doing your research, especially with places like uh, social media, because I fell for something that said homeopathic. It was for my gums, right? homeopathic, guaranteed to heal your gums within 2 months. And then I get it in the mail. It's in a, Ziploc bag. And I'm reading there's 2 bottles in a Ziploc bag. And, horrible how they shipped it. Came from Kansas. They send me an email that says that their headquarters is Rockefeller Center, New York, New York. And then I went into the ingredients, FDNC blue number one. I'm like, this is not homeopathic. And then it says, then I look up the company and it's a big pharma company out of, Israel. And I'm just like, you really, even with food companies, because food companies are being bought out left and right, the organic ones. So you really need to not only see who's owning them, of course, but also the labels.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, for sure. You have to yeah, and then your purchasing power goes a long way. We still do live in a commercial realm, and where you spend your money, I think certainly has weight to it. It certainly
Mhm.
does dictate to a degree, for sure. Um, yeah, no, I would agree. And then of course, yeah, like just being really aware of the labels, and then yeah, you're to the more the sick the society is, the more controllable they are. And so if
Mhm.
you're being if you're eating things that are just not necessarily food, you're eating packaged items that have 40 different ingredients in it, like that's not healthy.
Hmm.
And so
No,
it's
and
not
I've been there growing up, but
no,
then
for
again,
sure.
growing up, we didn't hear about organic or natural or non-GMO.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. No, for sure. No, totally. And and then yeah, and then that's so and then again, like so then it's okay to like, as Jason Christoph says, it's about progress and not perfection.
Hmm.
And so, you can make those incremental adjustments going forward. And so just with awareness, you start to realize, okay, wait a second here. It's not necessarily so much about what you need to do or take on. It's really about like what you can discard and let go of. Like you don't need to take on all this stuff. It's like you can look at your environment, you can look at your lifestyle and be like, okay, I can actually remove a bunch of this stuff. That's actually going to be first and foremost way healthier for me. I don't necessarily have to, buy a bunch of stuff. I can just let go of it all. And that can be empowering as well, right?
It really can. And do you think, let's see, do you think that with the future, do you think that they will continue because they're already messing with the food system, obviously, whether it be, what they did with the eggs and the outbreaks like that. And just do you think that their goal, meaning the ones that claim to have power, right? Their goal is to just infiltrate like all the foods because I see the food getting attacked, more than ever, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Yeah. And sorry, what was the question? What's the goal? The goal is to,
Do you think that one of their main goals is to infiltrate the food system to the point where because you see so many products that used to be like made without seed oils and then they put canola, they put sunflower seed oil, then they advertise it right on their package, new ingredients or new formula. Like they're not even hiding it anymore.
no, absolutely, man. Well, it's all interconnected too, right? Like big
Hmm.
pharma to big agriculture, and then they're all owned by
Yeah.
Vanguard and BlackRock. And so it's basically, and then whoever really owns Vanguard and State Street and BlackRock, like those are the real ones that are, controlling,
Hmm.
controlling the puppets, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, I believe that they already have, and then you can see, certain brands that have started out great, and then they eventually get bought out by
Hmm.
these bigger conglomerates, and then they end up getting cheaper um, ingredients, and you can kind of already see the compromise going. But yeah, I think we're already facing that, and I think the solutions is just get to know your local farmers, get to know your local ranchers, check out farmers markets. Farmers markets are like amazing, right? Like they're awesome. I love them. They're it's fun to interact. You get to know who is really truly um, making your food
Mhm.
or providing your food. Um, and and I think those are solutions because then you can, yeah, you can also get out of the, you're spending your money locally, and then you're not necessarily feeding the beast, so to speak, with the big conglomerates, like the big grocery stores and the chains and all of that.
And I mean, I'm well aware that it takes everyone, that we need all of humanity on our side, whether you're into healthy eating like we are or not. I'm just using that as an example because a lot of people who have, woken up, so to speak, or understand what's going on in the world, they tend to eat healthy. I would say a lot of people.
I say so too. I think that's kind of like the number one. That's at least what what I stress is that, like, yeah, if we can get your your physical health in line first, that everything else is a little bit easier to address. And if we're completely out of balance with that, it's going to be challenging to start to try to implement mindset shifts
Mhm.
if you have brain fog and you're not really eating properly. But yeah, if you can start to do that. And then again, like, there's levels to this as well, right? I think there's like, I don't know if I already mentioned this or not, but like it's like we need to also take breaks. Like it's good to stay informed. I really truly believe that. Like I think um you just you look at the word breakdown of ignorance. It's like ignore, right? So to ignore wisdom and truth and knowledge, which is what your podcast is, that's you're actually becoming immoral. You're not really a moral individual. And I think true wisdom stems from understanding and embodying that wisdom. And wisdom comes from experience. And with that, we do live in a society where we are inundated with information. We have, we have like, four different apps that people can communicate with. We have Slack, we have emails, we have text messages, we have phone calls, we have everything. So it's like you're just getting inundated with information, and so at times we need to get it back out into nature, remove ourselves, take those breaks, find our peace again, and then we can come back refreshed. And we can, and then there's levels to the awakening process as well, right? It can be really you can start off with getting really angry and enraged, and then um it can start to, that leads to then hopelessness, where you start to really get get nihilism kind of creeps in. You start to think like, what's the point of it all? Right. And then you start to like dig a little bit deeper and you start to see the remedies. You start to see like, okay, wait a second here. I can kind of do this. I can find my community. I can find my people
Mhm.
again. And with that then comes the confidence to go back out there. But just wherever you are, just address wherever you are, and and then have compassion for that. But also know that, like, where you are right now does not mean that you're staying there. It means that you can still, push to go forward. And yeah,
And I get exactly what you mean about, taking breaks, especially because social media can be used to, get at you by them taking down your post or whatever it may be. But it's so important to take those breaks, and especially, on a weekly basis, to get out and explore nature as best as you can. Yeah, like you and I know they're spraying the skies, they got the 5G towers up, but get out there and just, be thankful for, be in the moment, be thankful for where you are, for where you can, what you can do, and just explore life.
absolutely, man. No, I oscillate back and forth from, like I see, the advancements of, artificial intelligence, and where technology is going. And I know at first, and I still do, I have some reservations with that. I have some fears that are coming up, like what does that mean? And then I also, like the fact that we're talking on Zoom right now, right? We're communicating, and this is a great, connection. Like I wouldn't have been able to connect with you without social
No,
media.
not at all.
So it's a wonderful tool. And so I think just understanding that too, that like, where I'm coming around to is like I'm starting to realize, okay, I like to put myself out more, because if this algorithm is going the way that it's going, the more that we start to infiltrate the algorithm with our own essence for positive, for love, for good, that's going to, necessarily affect the change. Um, and if we just remove ourselves from that, then it's going to the artificial intelligence is just going to move towards, I guess, the controllers and how they want to
Hmm.
manipulate. So, but it's challenging, right? It's Yeah, it's still weird. It's still
Hmm.
weird. But I've kind of played around with it. I've kind of played with, you get like the meta artificial intelligence on Instagram, and I've asked it a bunch of questions just related to, legal stuff. And it's interesting to find out, like, you have to ask the specific questions,
Yeah, okay.
and you can start to see, like, okay, how much information are they actually putting out there? And then you can start to, like, I guess, curate it to your, I guess, to your liking, in a sense, right? You have to be specific with asking. You can't just ask generic questions.
No, not at
uh,
all.
but yeah, but it's fascinating. And again, it's just tools, right? So, if we can use those tools to our advantage, then awesome. But there's also just always be aware. And then and then with kids as well, is challenging, right? Because as adults, we're addicted to these things.
Hmm.
So how can we expect a 11-year-old or 12-year-old
Yeah.
to handle this kind of stuff? So but again, putting parameters on, just like as if we would do it with a child, we can put our own parameters on ourselves with that. And again, just if you're looking and you're scrolling on social media and you're finding that, like, someone is just not necessarily making you feel very good about yourself, well, that can also be more or less, something that you need to look at yourself. But
Hmm.
if it's also something that, because it's just not resonating and you're not necessarily like friends with them, but you're just like a follower, well, then maybe it's okay to, like, let them go and not
Oh
have them in
yeah.
your feed anymore, so you can curate
Well,
someone that's actually going to be more beneficial for you, right?
yeah, I've noticed that too. And what's so great about people like you and I'm not saying that we're better than anyone, is that we have, the mindset where we can tell where somebody's going, or what they're thinking, and if they make, like, let's say that they make an ignorant comment, you can just delete it, or you can, like, just ignore it, just not even reply. So many times especially on TikTok where I get the larger presence, there'll be a few comments where it's just like, I'm not even gonna go there. Like, it's not deletable. It's not anything worth deleting, but it's like, really, you know what I mean? So
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't need to necessarily, fill your energy with that. It's like, yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah. And it's also good to have some of those naysayers around too, right? Because it kind of keeps you in check. It keeps your ego in check. And you're like, okay, cool. Hey, am I acting out of alignment here, or am I congruent with my
Hmm.
values and where I want to go? And then, yeah, so it's a good check-in. And then sometimes, if it is something that where am I out of a line, then I'm like, okay, cool. I need to check myself. And then sometimes if it's just someone who's just angry because you are providing something that is, like, restructuring their belief system, then
Yes.
that's okay as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. And I think, in the future, I think more and more, and it takes a grassroots effort like we're doing. And yes, we do have the, censorship, we have the, obstacles, but it's just like not even, part of it's not even caring, about like the censorship, or them being against this, you name it, because it's like, okay, I'm just gonna live my life. I'm gonna continue to, understand what's going on in the world and reach who I can, and to those who I can't, it is what it is.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. No, for sure. No, it's just as you were talking, like, I mean, it's similar to like we just find ways around the censorship, right? It's something similar to like, you know, like a sabotaging topic about like, when music industry and musicians started to sing and about, drug use and whatnot, they had to use like code words, right?
Hmm.
Now we're essentially just using the same sort of methods to get around certain censored topics as well. So it just becomes you become more innovative, you become more creative with that, and yeah, and I think it's also, I think it might be turned down a little bit, once, after November, it might calm down a
That's a
little,
good point.
but who knows, but it's definitely it's becoming aware of the manipulation. And that's what it is. It's truly, when you look back and you take a step back, it's all to divide and conquer.
Hmm.
Uh, and Yeah, the Tavistock Institute, which is basically a think tank. I mean, they basically created like a three system response in order to um, basically dictate how the population reacts to stress. And so like I think so the first response was superficiality. It's where members of the population they will stand for ideological or virtuous ideals that don't necessarily create solutions, but are more or less in all effect like superficial. So we
Hmm.
could see, how that has played out over the last 4 years, just superficiality. And then the second one was fragmentation, right? So truly division was the agenda, divide and conquer to create this civil unrest. Because if all the masses are divided, then again, that's creating diversion and for what they want to do. And then the third one was just truly like, like this is, I think they called this fantasy trip, where it was essentially where they were just you would just become almost disassociated with all of the current events, and you can see what, like, like people who or who experience real trauma, they disassociate. And so they just literally become so fatigued with all the nonsense that's going on that they just want to just block it out. And then eventually hopelessness comes in, and then nihilism comes into play. And
Hmm.
that's ultimately the agenda that they want, right? Like these think tanks, they come into to these committees, and they formulate ways of how they can just break you down.
Hmm.
And it's alarming. And again, once you start to know, like, okay, that's what they want, then you can then start to navigate against that, or you can start to pivot and buffer and strengthen your foundation for that. But yeah, it's alarming, So again, back to your previous question, it is, I definitely have compassion for folks who are, I mean, give and take, right? Like certain days, my best days, I want to have compassion, because it's hard to realize, like, when you've been duped, and when your whole perspective is completely um, been fragmented. It's a challenge. And
Hmm.
so in order to, I think it takes a incredible amount of courage to be able to break free of that. And there's a lot more people that are starting to do that more and more. And it's also, I think, based on just the absurdity of the desperations as well of what's going on too, right? Like we've, what we've experienced these last 4 years is like just is so accelerated, right?
Hmm.
I mean, usually it's kind of like they draw it out like every 19 or 20 years or so. Like they have these big mass events. But it seems like the last 4 years they've just like we've had basically, 60 years all in one, you know, short period of time.
Seriously. Now back to, because I was just a fly on the wall when I was doing the TV shows. It was primarily TV shows. I did a few movies like Stranger Than Fiction, Horrible Bosses too, but I was just a fly on the wall extra. When you were doing it, was it all like almost like government program? I don't know if you want to call it government programming, predictive programming, you name it, or was there just like everyday, TV shows, movies that were just like, whether it be feel good or just stories? Because see, what got me out of that is it was like late 2016, early 2017, and it was all like political propaganda. And it's like, I don't want to be a part of that, like tearing down statutes. Like there was actually one that was on my voucher that said I was a white nationalist. And it's like, I'm not a white nationalist. I'm as diverse as it could be. I have nothing to do with that. And then I said, this is a lot of propaganda. I really don't. And this was TV shows like Scandal and all the popular shows back then. And I'm just like, no, I'm done. And I was only doing it as a second job. Well, there was only 1 year that I did it all year, and it was very, as you know, doing that all year, especially as an extra, is like the income's like, you know what I mean, hit or miss.
Right. Right. Yeah, no, it definitely is, man. That's all really it is, right? Like music, the music industry, the film and television, it's all literally propaganda programming for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So you have these three-letter agencies that are involved in it as well. And they're looking and they're reviewing the scripts to make sure that it's okayed and greenlit to go forward. And so yeah, no, it's definitely
Well, look at even the networks. They're three-letter agency: ABC, NBC, Fox,
yep.
CBS.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, and then yeah, it is, man. It's alarming. Like I don't really watch any movies and film anymore, or like film and or television programs really
No,
anymore.
not network. I just, pick things
Yeah.
out, and watch to see, the programming in it, so to speak. But no, I'm with you 100%. Even with here's a good topic, is even with the Olympics, I was actually watching, like I told you before the podcast, that I was watching I did watch a lot of events, but I watched like, countries, athletes that I wanted to watch. I didn't watch the US, so to speak, like the mainstream that they were putting on NBC. There was a lot of just stuff that I didn't want to see. I didn't want to see Snoop Dogg, this, that, this athlete, LeBron James. That's not, and if you're a fan of that, hey, go right ahead. You know what I mean? But it was just like I saw it from a different, complete angle. Like one thing that I don't know if I should mention this, but I was watching a Palestinian it was Taekwondo. He's out there, right? And he's against, and I don't know if you knew this, but they have a country called uh, the Olympic Refugee Committee, where they compete under the Olympic flag. And this guy, the guy, so the guy was one guy was from Palestine, the other guy was born in Iran. And what did they do in the crowd? And this was not the announcers. This was the cameraman. He shows a bunch of Israelis waving the Israel flag. You knew that the cameraman had to have done that on purpose. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just like so much. Like I was just picking things out, but I don't think, so to speak, that all these athletes that were in there are part of a club or something, or even like the one American that I was impressed with, this 20-year-old weightlifter who won I bronze medal. Just you could tell he was a down to earth guy. He was actually what, and the one other thing that they were doing is like totally picking on the Chinese athletes. Like I could tell, like this guy was cordial, shaking the Chinese athletes that beat him in the event. And but one thing I did notice about a lot of these athletes, and that you could take from society, is that like even like the canoe slalom, which or kayak slalom, but both of those events, it's almost like a family type setting. Like they're really cool to each other, and that's what we need in society.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, for sure. And just the commercials as well, right? I'm sure the commercials were just were pretty eye-opening too. Like in between breaks, you just sort of
Oh,
see
you know what's funny is I have the
what's coming
Peacock
in.
app, so I was watching it whenever I wanted to, and yeah, all the commercials were politicians or pharma. Really, it was like politicians, pharma. That was it on the Peacock app. And it's funny too, is they had like not only this, but with the Olympics is normally Peacock because I watched the 2020, the one in China, the Winter Olympics to see what was going on because it was the COVID era, and things like that. And your Canada, that they really did something because your Canada was playing Russia because Russia was allowed in those Olympics in women's hockey.
Okay.
And 45 minutes, Russia was out on the ice waiting for Canada to come out. And I'm thinking, what the heck are they going to declare that all of the Canadian women's team have COVID or something? And then finally, 45 minutes later, they come out and they play the match, but they were showing people in hazmat suits, in the hallways, and I'm like, so what's going on? I really want to, find out what's going on. And then they wound up playing, and they were playing in masks. It was absurd. How would you play hockey in a mask? But there was just so much, you could tell. But then normally they leave it up for like a week or two, right, on Peacock to so you can watch the replays, watch the events again. They didn't take down all the events, but they took down like that boxing because the boxing controversy. Not only that, the Olympics got rid of boxing. This is the IOC. They got rid of boxing. They got rid of breakdancing, and breakdancing. You can't even see the replay of that anymore. And gymnastics they got rid of, where the Israeli team wore the all-seeing eye outfits. They got rid of
Yeah.
all those events. You can't watch the replay. Like they know what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
no, absolutely. No, it is. It's all, I mean, as you know, within the industry, right? Like you look at all these
Hmm.
product placements or
Oh
like
yeah.
any like there's no mistakes that
Hmm.
occur. Like any pictures and anything that goes on film,
Oh yeah.
it's they have so many eyes, producers, director, ADs, they're all looking at what is on the screen. And so everything is purposely intentional and yeah, so there's it's not like they just overlooked it or any of that.
No, not
No.
one, not
So
one bit. Yeah.
no. And it's very deliberate and yeah, and it's all again just to manipulate and to program for sure.
Hmm.
And so, absolutely, man. And yeah, and it's like I mean, on one level you can be aware of it and you can still watch it from like almost like an educational standpoint, and then but
Hmm.
if you're just watching it from a place that from like an ignorant place where you're not necessarily aware of the potential of what's happening, it can be yeah, you can start to create behavior that is
Hmm.
indicative of what you see on the screen, right? Because the subconscious also doesn't can't differentiate between reality,
Hmm.
what's on the screen, and what's imagined as well.
Yeah.
And so yeah, no, it is. It's I mean, we are truly in a information war right now. And so you just become aware. You're aware with it, and you just become vigilant in what you're ingesting.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
but I'm with you as far as like watching TV shows. I have no interest in TV series or anything. And if you do, hey, go right
yeah.
ahead, do your thing. But it's
No, what I
just
was gonna say, I don't watch any now, like
mhm,
basically in the last, whatever, since like basically the last 4 or 5 years. But I know though, like, growing up, like there was like a lot of the films were based on sort of like the hero's journey, which I
mhm,
think had some had some benefits to that. There was definitely programming in it, but there was sort of like
sure.
the hero's arc and journey. And so, but now, from what I'm understanding and hearing from others, that they're almost taking that stuff away, and It's
Oh,
it's
they've ramping up. Yeah, they're ramping up things. I know exactly what you mean.
yeah, like
Hmm.
it's not even really like it's not even exciting. It's not even about the hero's journey, so to speak. It's
No.
about just literally just in your face indoctrination. And
Yeah, and I think, do you think maybe, well, it's been going on for ages, but I think 2016 during that election cycle or whatever, really, they just ramped it up. Because one thing that was funny is, you know, I was working the day after the election on the show Training Day, and Bill Paxton was on it. This was right before he passed away. You know, the guy from Chet from Weird Science, he
yep,
was on there, and a really nice. Some of these people are just the nicest guys, as you know. You know, even if they aren't part of the club, they're the nicest guys. But the whole crew and everyone is like, we're all having a traumatizing day because Trump got elected, and it's like you and I are just like, we are alive. We can just live our lives. We don't have to, you know. And were you living in LA in 2016, or were you living in California, or no?
I was living in 2016. I was living in the Bay Area. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because see, I was living in LA, and they
Okay.
protested the streets for 2 weeks during that election.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, well, I worked in San Francisco, so
Oh, okay.
yeah, it was it was yeah, it was definitely a lot of people that were upset about that for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's emotional, right? Everyone's like they're predicated on playing with the emotions of things and not necessarily what's logical and rational and all of that. And
Exactly.
that's part of the whole manipulation as well. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, no, it is. It is. It's alarming. Yeah, I mean, you can see that playing out just with like, the crisis with Russia and Ukraine and how all of a sudden, people that you felt were peaceful people were suddenly now posting about, hurting and harming people that
I
were
know. Oh, yeah.
waving certain flags that were not necessarily the appropriate flag to be rooting for. And so it just shows the manipulation, right? So you can,
Hmm.
yeah, it's like whatever, getting back, like backing up whatever the next big thing is, whatever thing that
Hmm.
you need to be um I guess like taking a stand for. And of course, back to like the equity elements of like with law and legalese elements, that's what they kind of want. They want to try to force you into those moments where you're protesting and fighting and
Hmm.
taking a stand against the system, because then that way they can deem you as a basically a commercial enemy. And then with that, then they can basically take your property away and fine you and all of that. But if you
Yeah.
are able to get into honor and not necessarily fall victim or fall into that trap of protesting, then you have more, I guess you have more of a way to navigate the the fiction versus the reality of things, right?
Hmm.
And I know I'm kind of purposely being vague, sorry, but it's just a matter of like, but yeah, I think that's what they want. They want you to essentially be constantly in fight mode, fighting for something or fighting against something. And then when you do that, you're more susceptible to be further enslaved.
Yeah. You hit it right on the nose. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. Now, if someone wants to get reach out to you to get your coaching, how would they do that?
Yeah. They can go directly to my website, ryankhuff.com. I'm also on social media, same name, Ryan K. Huff, on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Excellent. Yeah, you
Yeah,
were such a great guest, Ryan. We had such a great conversation, and the world needs more people, standing for all of humanity, if you know what I mean, and opening their eyes to the truth.
I appreciate you, Mark. Thank you, man.
Yeah.